You know, the reason you feel a constant sense of invisible friction, even when you're succeeding, it isn't a lack of discipline. It's actually a conflict in your internal code. We're going to show you the 3-step system for values architecture to build a life that finally stops fighting itself.
Yeah, just let that sink in for a second. Think about that feeling. It's like you're pushing a boulder uphill, even when you're hitting all your goals, right? You get the promotion, you finish the project, but there's still this drag, this resistance you can't quite put your finger on. See, this isn't about working harder. It's about a fundamental misalignment in your personal operating system. It's a bug in your code that's been running in the background, just draining your energy, maybe for years.
And the solution, the way we actually debug that code, is a framework called values architecture. Now, this isn't about some wishy-washy affirmations you stick on a mirror. No, this is about engineering. It's a method for designing your life based on a really clear, codified set of principles. Your principles. It's about building a personal constitution, a blueprint so clear that all your energy goes toward building your life, not just fighting yourself to get through the day.
So here's our blueprint for this explainer. First, we'll define that invisible friction, and then we'll diagnose the surprisingly high cost of living in misalignment. After that, we are going to dive into the core of this system, the 3-step values architecture protocol. Then we'll get into the psychology behind why this alignment is so incredibly powerful. And finally, we'll put it all together and show you how to build your own system for a life that feels less like a struggle and way more like a state of flow.
You know, it's funny. Most of us are absolute experts at optimizing the how of life. How to be more productive, how to get that next promotion, how to manage our time down to the minute. But what this framework really suggests is that we almost never stop to audit the why. Why are we even chasing these specific goals? Is this definition of success even ours? And that gap right there between an optimized how and a totally unexamined why, that's the source of the friction. It's the big paradox of our time. Achievement without alignment, well, it's just a more successful way of failing. And look, this misalignment isn't just some philosophical problem. It is a real, diagnosable issue with tangible scientific costs. So let's actually look at the biology of what's happening deep inside your brain when your daily actions are at war with your deeper needs. This is where we uncover the hidden tax that you're paying every single day.
The root condition here is something called identity drift. This is what happens when you're running on, well, borrowed values. These are the scripts that have been handed to you by your culture, your parents, your company, what you should want. You know the ones, the career path that makes your family proud, the definition of a good life you just absorbed from social media. You're basically living by someone else's blueprint, and while that might lead to external success, it creates this growing chasm between your actions and your authentic self.
And that identity drift, it leads directly to this, cognitive dissonance. This is a very well-documented psychological state of conflict. Your prefrontal cortex, which is like the CEO of your brain, gets locked in this constant battle. It's trying to get you to do things that your deeper core value system is totally rejecting. I mean, imagine an internal civil war raging 24/7. It's really no wonder you feel exhausted. That energy has to come from somewhere, right?
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because this shows it's not just a feeling. It is a physiological event with some pretty devastating costs. That internal conflict, it triggers your amygdala, your brain's little threat detector, which starts pumping out the stress hormone cortisol. And chronically high cortisol literally erodes your working memory. It's like trying to run complex software with half the available RAM. It dramatically increases decision fatigue, so every little choice, from what to eat to how to answer an email, feels absolutely monumental. And ultimately, it just completely exhausts your executive function, your capacity for high-level thought. You are literally draining your most valuable mental resources just to maintain a status quo that is actively working against you.
Okay, so if that's the problem, what on earth is the solution? This brings us to the core of our explainer, the practical step-by-step protocol for rebuilding your internal operating system from the ground up. This is your 3-step blueprint from moving from diagnosis to design and from a life of conflict to a life of coherence. The protocol has 3 sequential phases, and believe me, the order is critical. First, we have the Inversion Audit, which is all about discovery, finding your raw materials. Second is the Hierarchical Stack, which is about prioritization, creating the actual blueprint. And third, Behavioral Translation, which is all about implementation, laying the foundation brick by brick. Let's break down each one. All right, step 1 is the Inversion Audit. and this is a brilliantly counterintuitive move. See, most values exercises fail because they ask, what do you value? And this just leads to aspirational values, those generic ideals like kindness or hard work that we think we should value. But Inversion completely flips the script. It asks, what makes you angry? What makes you feel resentful or violated? Think about the last time you felt that flash of rage when a colleague lied to you. That wasn't just you being upset, no. That was a primal defense of your authentic value of integrity. Your negative reactions are a map, and they point directly to the principles you are already biologically wired to defend.
Okay, so you've audited your friction, and now you have a list of your authentic values. Awesome. But what happens when they conflict with each other? Let's say you value both adventure and security. An exciting but kind of risky job offer comes along. What do? Well, because both values have equal weight in your mind, they pull with equal force. And the result? Paralysis. It's a tug of war happening inside your head, and you are the rope, just being stretched to the breaking point.
And this brings us to step 2, solving that conflict with the hierarchical stack. What you have to do is force rank your top 5 authentic values. Now, this isn't about which values are better than others. It's about creating a clear rule of law for your own decision making. So in this example, with adventure ranked at number 2 and security way down at number 4, the decision is already made. The exciting job offer wins. This stack acts like a structural compass. It's like your personal Maslow's hierarchy. It clarifies what's foundational versus what's just nice to have. And it lets you make bold moves without all the guilt or second guessing, and that dramatically reduces your cognitive load.
I love this quote because it just perfectly captures the pivot to our final and maybe most critical step. You can have the most beautifully defined and stacked values in the entire world, but if they don't translate into real-world action, they're meaningless. They are just a pleasant thought, a hallucination. This is where the architecture becomes real.
So how do we make them real? Well, the third step is behavioral translation. And we do this by defining a structural minimum for each of your top values. A structural minimum is not a vague intention like, oh, I'll spend more time with my family. No, it is a specific, measurable, and recurring behavior. It's the non-negotiable proof written right into your schedule that serves as the bridge between an abstract idea and your daily reality. It is the load-bearing wall of your entire value system.
And here's what that looks like in practice. If your value is curiosity, your structural minimum could be to read 1 scientific paper every single week. For family, it might be a hard stop from work at 6 p.m. every day, no exceptions. For health, 3 dedicated workouts a week, blocked out in your calendar just like any other critical appointment. These actions become the physical foundation of your value architecture, the living proof that you are actually living your code. So we have the what, that 3-step protocol. But now let's explore the why. What's actually happening in the brain from a psychological standpoint that makes this shift from friction to flow even possible? Let's pop the hood and look at the engine that makes this whole system run.
The answer lies in this really powerful framework called self-determination theory. It basically says that we humans have 3 core psychological needs: competence, relatedness, and autonomy. But what's really fascinating here is that autonomy, that feeling of being the author of your own life, is by far the most powerful driver of sustainable intrinsic motivation. So by consciously designing your own values and principles, you are directly fueling this core human need. You're no longer following someone else's script, you are executing your own, and your brain absolutely loves it. And ultimately, when your actions align with your self-designed values, your brain's reward centers release dopamine and serotonin. It just feels right. The system maximizes what psychologists call cognitive ease. You stop fighting yourself. And this completely transforms discipline. It's no longer this brute force you have to apply against resistance. It becomes a natural state of flow that just emerges from a system in perfect alignment. Okay, let's bring it all home. We've gone from diagnosing that invisible friction that drains our energy to understanding the architectural blueprint that can completely eliminate it. This final section is all about cementing that path from friction to a truly effortless state of flow. Here it is, one last time, your path to alignment boiled down to its absolute essence. First, audit your friction. Use your anger and resentment as a map to discover what you truly value. Second, stack those values. Create a clear hierarchy that automates your decision-making. And third, translate those values into specific scheduled behaviors, your structural minimums. audit, stack, translate. That's the blueprint. Simple as that.
And this might be the most profound takeaway from this entire framework. We are so often told to just be better, to have more willpower, to be a person of integrity. But this reframes the whole concept. Integrity isn't something you just are. It's something you build. It's the natural outcome of a well-designed system. It's an achievement of architecture, not just of character. And that, right there, is the ultimate promise of this whole approach. It's a shift away from the hustle culture of more. True productivity and real fulfillment, it isn't about the volume of what you do. It's about mastering the internal systems that make focus and alignment and progress the effortless path of least resistance.
So the question isn't whether you have an internal architecture, because you do. Everybody does. The only question is, was it designed by default or was it designed by you? What blueprint will you design?